Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dusty Holcomb. I'm the Deputy Director for the Office of Transportation Public-Private Partnerships here in Virginia. I want to thank you all for joining the webinar today to talk about the pipeline that we have of P3 projects here in the Commonwealth. Joining me today will be Jackie Cromwell, who's the Program Manager within OTP3 charged with the development of and implementation of P3 policies and programs. Director Ken had an unexpected conflict and sends his regrets. He's not able to join us today, so Jackie and I will be giving the presentation. Today, the purpose of today's webinar is certainly to provide you with any interested party with an overview of Virginia's P3 program and a look ahead at some of the potential candidate and conceptual projects. Prior to starting the presentation, we need to do a little bit of housekeeping. Please be sure that your telephone is on mute so that we don't have any background noises during the presentation and the question-answer session afterwards. If we have time, we will certainly try to answer questions that are presented to us. There's a chat box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen where you can submit questions for today's webinar. And as always, our team is available to answer questions about any of the projects or the program if you contact our office directly. Copies of today's presentations will be available on our website at www.va.ppta.org. And finally, for the housekeeping stuff, this webinar is being recorded and it will also be available on our website. A lot of the participants, and I can see a lot of the names up there, are familiar with our program, but I would just want to give a little bit background into our program. We've had our enabling legislation, which is the Virginia's Public-Private Transportation Act, for about 18 years. It was enacted back in 1995. We certainly have a successful P3 track record of nearly $12 billion worth of either active or constructed P3 projects here in the Commonwealth over that 18-year period. We have a very receptive political environment here in the Commonwealth, and certainly with the implementation of the OTP3 or the office here, a strong institutional knowledge of P3 projects. And that's not only in our office here, but also at the agency level. Jackie Cromwell will talk a little bit later about some of our public outreach and education. That was a big focus in 2012, and she's going to emphasize some of the things there. And certainly the tangible benefits that are derived out of some of the P3 programs, such as economic development, job growth, reduced congestion along corridors here in the Commonwealth, and trip time reliability are some of the things that we've focused on and are part of the history of the program. On this slide, you'll see a breakdown of the organizational chart within the Commonwealth, certainly under the leadership of Secretary Connaughton. Our office is directly connected to the Secretary's office, and we report and provide the Secretary updates on all the P3 projects. You can see each of the transportation agencies. Obviously, the Office of Transportation Public-Private Partnerships is a multimodal office. As part of this pipeline development, we seek out multimodal projects and concepts. You'll see from the pipeline itself, as Ms. Cromwell goes through it, that several of them are from the Virginia Department of Transportation and Department of Rail and Public Transportation and other agencies. Next slide is sort of a focus on the office itself. Certainly, we have Director Ken leading the organization. We have program managers that have what I call an eclectic background in finance, law, and construction and engineering, a lot of different financial areas. We have some very strong business management and financial management consultants, and our legal teams are through the Office of the Attorney General. And as a group, we believe that these resources are a tremendous help to making this program a success. This next slide just gives you an overview, a picture of the Commonwealth itself, and seeing some of the projects that were going on in the 2012 time period. You'll see a lot going on in Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads, but we also want to emphasize some of the things that are going on in the western part of the state, along the Route 58 corridor, certainly Route 460. It also shows some of the completed projects that we've done. Again, going back to that portfolio of nearly $12 billion of constructed and or under construction projects. Next slide talks a little bit more about the achievements in 2012. I-495 Capital Beltway is certainly up and running now. Our private sector partners, Transurban and Flora, have been operating it, I guess now since November of 2012 when it opened up. And also the Regional Operations Traffic Center is awarded to Serco Incorporated. This is a $355 million contract to operate the state's 5 transportation operations centers and manage the safety service patrol. And we'll go on to the next one, which is projects under construction. This portfolio is significant with a lot of these projects beginning their construction in the 2012 time frame. I-95's express lanes up in the Nova and Fredericksburg districts in Northern Virginia. The Route 460 and the Midtown Tunnel projects down in the Hampton Roads region. Coalfields Expressway out in the southwestern Virginia. Route 58 and Route 28 are both long-term projects that phases were initiated in the 2012 time frame. And of course, Dulles Rail, a significant project along the Dulles Corridor up in Northern Virginia. 2012 procurements, Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. This project has been out for a little while. Certainly we're still watching the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel and the procurement. We're certainly waiting on a decision by VDOT to continue the procurement and working with the Hampton Roads leadership to coordinate project priorities in the Hampton Roads area. This one we're going to look at closely in 2013, certainly working with the Hampton Roads region, making sure that their priorities are consistent with the procurements that we want to put out as P3s. This next slide talks about some of the program achievements, and I really want to focus in on the table at the bottom of the slide. This highlights some of the metrics that we look at related to projects that are either as a conceptual project, ones under construction, and ones that we're advancing through the process itself. Looking at the total cost, the amount that can be leveraged by the state contribution, jobs supported, economic activity. Those are some of the criteria that we look at when we're looking at conceptual projects through our high-level screening and our detailed level screening. So as part of these metrics, we try to track these as we go along, focusing in on the benefits that we think are derived out of the project, not only benefits for the local community, but also benefits on a statewide level. Now I'd like to transition over to Jackie, who will talk a little bit more about some of the program achievements, but focus in a little bit on our working group here in the Commonwealth and public outreach.
Thank you, Dusty. As Dusty mentioned, one of the primary goals of our program effort this past year has been public education and a little bit of outreach. One of the things that we've found in Virginia, and I'm sure it's not any different in any other state, a lot of folks know about P3s, but not in any level of detail. So one of the things that under Secretary Connaughton's leadership we did this past year was create a working group that was comprised of stakeholders at many different levels, including state senators, state delegates, private sector partners, public sector partners from the different agencies, bringing them together several times throughout the year to educate them about what P3s are, what they can do, and just as equally what they can't do or what they're not as good at doing, so that they've got a better framework to understand the abilities of P3 projects for the Commonwealth. The thought being that then those elected officials go back out to their constituents and have a much better framework to explain to their constituents why a project is or isn't a good P3 candidate. If you look on our website, as as Dusty mentioned, it's www.vappta.org. You'll see a lot of the newsletters that we've released, legislative briefing sheets that are fact sheets to try and explain a lot of the financial and business elements of P3 in kind of digestible bites. But the goal is to ensure that the elected officials and the public understand well what we're doing, with the thought being that there'll be a more informed consumer when we go out with projects. And the projects that we'll be going out with this next year in this draft of the PPTA pipeline, we've gotten input from not only MPOs throughout the state, but also the other state transportation agencies that have resulted in 10 draft candidate projects for consideration and 10 draft conceptual projects. And projects is a little bit of a misnomer. It's really conceptual ideas. The difference between candidate projects and conceptual projects really is the level of detail that we've got. Candidate projects, we've got a lot more information about scope. Conceptual projects, we're going to be working to develop scope. This is just a map that shows you kind of statewide so you can get a feel for, as Dusty said, we've got a lot of projects in the urban areas in Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads. We're also trying to get out some P3 benefits out into the more rural regions of the state. Trying to diversify a little bit as far as shorter duration projects, a little bit smaller dollar value. One of the ones that won't be a smaller dollar value is the I66 Corridor improvements up in Northern Virginia. We've had a lot of interest in this project over the years. I think it's a universally recognized corridor of statewide significance. Over the past couple years, the environmental folks within the Department of Transportation have been looking at what the problems are and what some of the potential transportation solutions might be. At the same time, our office has been looking at starting towards whether this might be a desirable P3 project. We've posted a request for information June 28th. That RFI period closes November 25th. And again, if you go to the website that's listed at the bottom of the slide, you'll see a lot more information than I've got time to give right now. What we're going to try and do, though, is dovetail the RFI with the work that's going to go on in the Tier 2 environmental work, with the potential for an RFQ going out sometime early spring 2014, with possibly an RFP in 2015. One of the other candidate projects that we're looking at this year is in Arlington County. The air rights development concept is nothing new. It's new to Virginia. It's certainly not new to the U.S. or other places. Massachusetts has had a number of projects successfully go through procurement with air rights. The two sites we're looking at right now, one is in Roslyn and the other is in East Falls Church, as you can see the hatched areas. An RFI for this project was released on July 3rd. The idea with the RFI is going to the private sector to get feedback on areas of business which, frankly, we don't know a whole lot about. Our backgrounds tend to be more roadway-centric. This is a little bit different, so we are seeking input from folks that do this on a daily basis to see what might make this an extremely viable project for the Commonwealth and Arlington County. We're going to have a project briefing on August 6th. The RFI comment period closes September 20th. And again, take a look at that website for more information. For those of you familiar with Hampton Roads, you know that there is a somewhat disconnected HOV system down there that historically has been characterized in spots as underutilized. Last year in the pipeline, we identified this as one of our candidate projects to look into further. The high level screening that we have as a draft shows that the HOV on the south side is probably the most feasible, so that's what we're going to be exploring next to take to the Commissioner of Highways. And with his approval, we'll proceed to detailed level screening to see if this is feasible and desirable to advance under the PPTA Act. One of the larger projects that we started off looking at was I64 Peninsula Improvements. For those of you that have been following this, this is a 76-mile-long corridor from Richmond to Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. In June of this year, the Hampton Roads Metropolitan Planning Organization approved a resolution supporting improvements for a smaller section of this from Hummelbean Parkway at exit 242 down to Jefferson Avenue at exit 255. We've got a detailed level screening report right now that we're finalizing that's looking at a little bit bigger project than what the TPO advanced, but substantially smaller than the entire corridor. When we release that screening, when that's gone to the Commissioner and he's approved it, that's something that will be posted on our website. And certainly I would urge you to take a look at that. Hampton Roads Crossing Improvements is also a tremendous undertaking. Those of you that are familiar with the Hampton Roads area know that this is a conglomeration of a number of different projects.
If you want to continue.
Thanks. Anyway, the Hampton Roads Crossing Improvements was something that Secretary Connaughton suggested to us last year that may be a way to look at projects in a more regional way rather than looking at, say, HRBT separate from Patriots Crossing, separate from Monitor Merrimack. So this is one of the things that we're going to be working closely with the Hampton Roads NPO certainly in the next couple of weeks to talk to them about what their regional priorities are and where we really want to focus our resources jointly to move these projects forward. Different part of the state totally. This is I73 Corridor out in southwest Virginia. A number of years ago, the Department of Transportation had an environmental impact study that analyzed several different alternatives. They've progressed to the point that they've got an alternative that's been selected here that runs from the Roanoke area down to the North Carolina border. Very large project. This is something that we'd like to see from a business and financial standpoint if we can advance this as a P3 project. We're going to start a high-level screening to look at the feasibility of advancing this this summer. Another project that we're going to be taking on this summer is down in Hampton Roads. It's a much smaller project than the I73 Corridor, certainly, but it's the 460-58 connector. This is something that's been on the TPO radar screen as an area that needs some improvement. So, again, this is one that we'll assess at a high level, and if the Commissioner and the MPO agree, we'll move forward into a detailed level look at the business and financial case to advance. Jumping up to the northern Virginia part of the state, those of you that have been around will remember 495 opening to traffic this past November. What we're looking at here is an extension up to the American Legion Bridge of the express lanes. This is something that will start later this year, considering at a high-level look to see this, and this certainly would likely entail some conversations with the state of Maryland, because Maryland owns the American Legion Bridge, and certainly I'm sure that Maryland's interested in having the express lanes on their side of the border as well. We had cell towers and fiber optics as an option on our pipeline project last year. We think that this is an asset that the Commonwealth owns right now that we probably haven't maximized the use of. Certainly, those of you that drive along certain corridors have seen cell phone towers within certain interchanges. We want to take a systematic look at the assets the Commonwealth owns and what we can do to maximize both cell towers and fiber optic use within the right-of-way. I will say that this is something that didn't get a lot of, expressions of interest last year, and I think in the last 2 weeks we've had 4 groups come in expressing interest in this particular idea. So. This project, for those of you trying to orient yourselves in the state, this is just a little bit south of Richmond in the center of the state, Petersburg. This project would look to join truck traffic from existing 460 or the new 460 over to I-85. Right now, trucks need to drive up into Petersburg to travel back south on 85 for that connection, which obviously isn't the most it isn't the best thing from a transportation connectivity standpoint. Now, I will tell you that there is no transportation planning look at this project except maybe at division planning level. This has been something that I think the MPO has known would be good, but it's a big project. There are a lot of environmental challenges in this area. This project was one that the Secretary would like to see us advance the high-level and the detailed-level screening prior to any environmental studies so that we might guide the environmental studies, the alternatives, looking at what might be feasible and prudent from a financial standpoint. All right, now to the conceptual projects or conceptual glints in people's eyes. The last couple of years, we've spent a lot of time going around with transportation agencies talking about their business, trying to understand their needs so that we could identify some concepts to explore further. One of the first things we did was talk to the Department of Motor Vehicles, and one of the needs they identified was a weigh-in-motion system that was more electronic, something that could also do truck validation, credential validation at the same time. We're going to be working with DMV and VDOT closely this next year to identify along corridors of statewide significance where the ideal spots are for these weigh-in-motion systems. 460, the new 460 may be a good candidate for this as well, in particular because of the port traffic. The second conceptual project is availability payments as a concept. A lot of you know that we've been working closely with VDOT and the Department of Treasury as well as the OAG's office on whether we can pursue availability payments as Canada, Florida, some of the other states have done. While we're advancing and proving the concept, we're also looking at a couple projects that may be good candidate projects for the application of availability payments if we get the thumbs up from Treasury and the OAG that the concept is viable. The advertising sponsorship opportunities, this is again, nothing new. You've seen other states that have done, have wrapped their safety service patrols. Pennsylvania, I know, had done that with State Farm. VDOT has advanced this a little bit with signage at some of the rest areas. We just want to see if there is a little bit more, if we can optimize this concept a little bit further. And in particular, this is something we'd like feedback from the private sector. If you see opportunities that, you know, we're a little bit close to the subject that we're not seeing. Parking facilities enhancements, what we had in mind with this concept was at existing park and rides that the Commonwealth owns, exploring the concept of having a commercial strip development come in where you have services, dry cleaner, coffee shop, things like that, that make a park and ride attractive, and explore, you know, the concept of having the operations and upkeep of that facility turned over to whoever takes that commercial lease. The new park and ride facilities, what we're looking at there is either having the private sector come and develop new park and rides for us in spots that we've identified, say, for example, along the I-95 corridor, along the express lanes. We know there are several spots that we need more parking. Again, these may include retail space, and this is something that we're looking for feedback from the private sector. This is something new for us, so any feedback you have would be gratefully accepted. One of the concepts that was brought up from an MPO was the I-81 managed travel lane system. This is out in the southwest section of the state. And this is something that we're going to have to look into further at, you know, maybe a high-level screening to develop and see if it's feasible. Same thing with the Wallops Island Visitors Center. This is something we talked about with the Commercial Space Flight Authority, about designing visitor facilities for them. Rest area enhancements, again, these are things that we're looking for ways to enhance the existing rest areas that we've got. Electric car charging stations is an option. Truck parking facilities, I know, is a topic of discussion between DMV and the Department of Transportation, because the regulations for the length of time drivers can drive without stopping has changed, and so the points where they normally rested at the spacing is off now. And finally, the 460 Business Corridor improvements. That concept was something that Director Kin expressed last year as a kind of a long-term follow-up to the 460 corridor that we've just awarded, things that may be good add-on features once that facility is in place. Next step. The comment period for the draft pipeline ends on August 1st. We'd like all your comments in. Certainly, if you can send them to us in email, that's an easy way for us to capture suggestions or comments that you've got. And in particular, if you've got ideas for additions to the pipeline, that includes private citizens, local elected officials, certainly private industry, any of the MPOs that might be online, local government. We'd like to have the documents finalized in early August so that we can post that on our website. The projects that we're going to be advancing towards procurement in 2013, 2014, certainly the air rights development in Arlington County, I-66 Corridor, and the availability payments concept. As long as it's approved, we're going to move projects that seem to be good fits for that delivery method forward. We're going to advance 4 projects through the identification selection process in 2013. The first of those is I64 HIV to HOT conversion. The second is 495 Express Lanes extension up to the American Legion Bridge. Next is the 460-58 connector in Hampton Roads. And then finally, a portion of the I64 Peninsula Improvements. Longer term, we're going to be building a business and financial case project development on the Hampton Roads crossing improvements. And again, that is one that's going to require a joint effort between our office, Department of Rail and Public Transportation, VDOT, and the MPO. We want to work with the agencies and the stakeholders on scope development for the 10 conceptual projects to flesh those out so that next year this time, when we come out with the 2014 pipeline, you'll see some of the conceptual projects moving over into candidate projects. Again, if you need more information on our program, take a look at our website. We've got a number of documents that are up there that, as always, we'd appreciate your feedback on. And in particular, if you've got comments on the draft pipeline, please send them to Jennifer. Her email address is there. And if you've got questions related in general to our P3 program, send them to me. Now I'll turn it back over to you all and to Dusty and see if we can answer some of the questions that you've posed or would like to pose.
Thank you, Jackie. We'll probably be a few minutes getting a couple questions here. One that I see on there, and you went over it a little bit there, how can we have a meeting with your group? Well, we have meetings with our private sector partners all the time. You can contact Jackie at the information that is up on the screen right now, or go to our website. And on our website, there's a specific page that has all of our contact information up there. And you can either call me or Director Ken or Jackie, and we can set up a time for anybody from the industry to come in and not only talk about the program, but talk about projects, talk about different thoughts and ideas and concepts that you all have in mind. That's one of the keys to us making this pipeline a success is getting your all's input. So that's something that's important to us. Another question that I see up there, why is the I66 RFI out for 5 months? And I think the slide said it's from July to November. The background in that is just because of the complexity of the project. The project size, obviously it's going to be a significant project. The teaming that has to go together on the project itself, the cost of the project. We think it would be better if we had an RFIs that come in that really look at the technical feasibility and the financial solutions that are part of the project. So we wanted to make sure that it was out there long enough to allow for the project to get those aspects of it.
One of the other things, too, the 5-month period does is allow us to have a briefing in there with industry so that it's another opportunity to provide you with information. We'll plan to have folks from the MPO there and certainly the environmental folks that can answer questions about what they looked at from an environmental standpoint that might help you formulate, a good, innovative solution to the project.
And we're still working on finalizing the date of that project briefing, but that will be provided out on our website and hopefully in a lot of other venues so that we can make sure that industry knows of the date and location of that.
I think that's all the questions that folks have typed in. If anybody's got a question that you're more comfortable asking orally, we certainly can entertain those at this point. Wow, we must have been really good.
All right, with that, certainly if anybody has any other questions, they can just contact us directly. I want to thank you for taking the time to participate in the webinar. As I said before, Director Ken wasn't able to make it, but he certainly sends his regrets, and he's very enthusiastic about the program, and certainly everybody that we have within our team is enthusiastic about the program, and a lot of work that we have ahead with these conceptual projects and candidate projects. And again, I want to thank you for your time, and if nothing more, Jackie, anything else?
Just that, feel free, and I know we meet with folks on a weekly basis, and we're happy to do so. So call Dusty or I or Director Ken to set up a meeting, and we're happy to sit down and talk to you about ideas.
All right. With that, thank you very much for your time. That's the end of the program.